Hey guys, welcome back to Ableton Online. This is lesson number 10, exporting audio. So now that we have a rough sequenced arrangement laid down, what if we want to export this entire arrangement as a 2-track audio file that we can, say, listen to in iTunes or in the car or email to somebody? Well, that's where exporting audio comes in. So each one of these tracks, these individual audio or MIDI tracks, is going to be playing a specific sound or group of sounds. So for instance, there's the drums, here's the lead bass riff, there's the vocal snippet we chopped up and warped into the beat. Each one of those is its own individual audio channel or MIDI channel track in Ableton. If we bounce that down to a 2-track, we're going to send all of these individual tracks to our master bus, okay, our master track, and combine all of the tracks into a single stereo 2-track, which can be in the format of a WAV file, an A file, or probably the most commonly known, an MP3 file, which you can then play back on a variety of systems and software. So to get all of this content bounced down or exported to a 2-track, what we're first going to do is really quick scan through our track while it's playing and just kind of give a brief confirmation that we have it arranged and sequenced the way we want. So I don't want to hear that twice, so this part lasts a little bit too long for me, so I'm just going to highlight the whole section, delete it, and then I'm just going to go in here and grab everything else and drag it forward to make up for that space. So now, great. And this second part over here, this second drop, notice how this drop is, what, 16 bars? I want the same thing for this drop, so I'm gonna go ahead and extend this out, and you'll notice that if I pull it past the part where it's supposed to loop right here, you can see this little indentation sign. It doesn't look like a full division line, but you can definitely tell there's a little part at the top and a little part at the bottom that indicates it's looping. So that's where that loop ends. So I'm going to drag the rest of this out to match. So now both of these drop areas are 16 bars long. Great. Okay. So I've got it laid out, and also on the ending, I'm just going to make sure that and what I'm also going to do is I'm going to duplicate this track, because on that last little bit of the main bass riff, I want to put something special. I want to put a little something to make it ring out, a little delay line maybe or something. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to go over here to effects, and we're going to get into all of the great effects in Ableton throughout future lessons. But for right now, I'm just going to grab a simple delay and just throw it on, drag it onto this track. And that's fine for the dry wet, turn the feedback up, and I'm just gonna link both channels and just demo it out really quick. And actually, I only want that last little bit to echo out. And just play with it until you get it right. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I've got my arrangement locked in. It sounds great. I've confirmed that it's playing out the way I want it to play out. It's sequenced correctly. So now the next step is to go through your track and with nothing on the master bus. So if you go to your master, select it in session view, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have no effects down here right now, okay? And this is very important, okay, to make sure that your levels right here are above -6, your peaks are above -6, but below 0. And that's to make sure that you're making use of all of your significant bits. And without boring you, you're basically making sure that you're getting the most out of your dynamic range in Ableton. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna shift over here and click that, and that's a real-time readout of my peak volume level of all tracks combined. -3.98, perfect, okay? Now let's go to somewhere else, and you just check throughout the track. Okay, -5, great. Let's go to this part. Click to reset it anytime. Okay, looks good. Okay, and perfect. Everything looks great. If it was too low, what you can do is click the first track, shift click the last track, and you can use one volume fader to pull all the volumes up or all the volumes down together, and they will adjust in relation to each other. So their relative values will remain the same, okay? But I was sitting pretty good, okay? So -5.3 on this track was just about right for all the tracks and all their levels on my master bus output level. Now that I've confirmed that, just in case, I'm gonna grab a limiter and drop it onto my master bus. And this is only to prevent what are called ghost overs. So just in case something happens to pop out randomly and get really loud at a certain point, we don't wanna go above 0 here on our master fader, okay? 0 dB FS or 0 dB full scale in the digital domain is the ceiling. If you go above 0, you'll get digital clipping, and digital clipping is very bad, okay? So now that you've confirmed your levels, you've thrown a limiter on for good measure. You don't even need to adjust the gain right now, okay? We're not really worried about that. The next step in the process is to highlight the length of all of the material in your track, and you can just hit Command L. Now notice how that adjusted my loop brace from over here to wherever my highlighted section is, okay? So that's gonna put my dual purpose loop brace and exporting region boundary in the right place. Okay, now that you've got your loop brace defined, which is gonna tell Ableton how much of your arrangement you want to export in your timeline, you're going to zoom into the very beginning. And if you followed my advice and started your record, started your material in your production at bar 17, then all you have to do at the beginning is click and drag the beginning of your loop brace to 16.4.4. And what that's gonna do is two things. It's going to ensure that the first transient of your record comes through clearly on a variety of playback systems and softwares. So for instance, it'll help DJ softwares like Tractor and Serato, whose beat detection algorithms work a lot better when they have at least a few samples of audio, at least a little bit of silence before any of the content, so that their beat grids are more accurately defined right from the jump. The second thing that dragging this loop brace to 16.4.4 is going to do for you is it's going to ensure that distribution platforms like iTunes don't accidentally chop off the very beginning of your record, okay? The initial transient or whatever else you have playing right at bar 17, right at the beginning of your track. I've heard horror stories from producers that they bounced directly from the beginning of when the material started in the record and iTunes clipped it to like there. Now that big, fat, punchy, tight kick kind of sounds like a whoomp instead of, you know, being the initial impact they intended. So once you have 16/4/4 set up, that's just basically a quarter of a bar, a 16th of a bar before the initial material starts in your record. You're gonna go to the end of your record, and what you're gonna do is, now that I've got a delay line here, okay, turn looping off, so I can listen to it after that loop brace, because what I'm listening for is all of the effects to zero out. So on my master fader, I've got level, and that delay line, dun, dun, dun. When that completely dies out right about there, that's where I want to set the end of my loop brace. But make sure not to do this by sight. In fact, make sure that most of your audio production critical decisions are made by ear and not by sight, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, to check this thoroughly, I'm gonna press play, and then right around this area, when the track itself, this material stops, but the effect keeps going on, I'm going to turn up my volume output to my speakers, to my monitors, so that I can clearly hear very loudly where that tail ends exactly, okay? So here we go. Okay, so it ends right about there, 111, and for good measure, always give yourself another bar or two, okay? You don't want any material coming through, and it's just a good precaution to take, okay? So get in the habit of doing that. Nobody will notice, just like nobody will notice the beginning of your loop brace being that much earlier than right on beat, okay? So I'm gonna save that. Okay, so I've set the beginning and the end of my loop brace correctly. I've ensured that my peaks are above -6 but below 0. I've thrown a limiter on for good measure just to make sure I don't get any ghost overs. Now I'm ready to bounce my record out. So I am going to click the loop brace to define the area that I want to export. And I can get to the export menu inside Ableton one of two ways. I can either click File and Export Audio Video, or I can use the quick key command, Command-Shift-R, okay? Either way is just fine. Now these are the settings you're gonna wanna use right out of the gate, okay? You're gonna wanna render your master track, leave normalize off, leave render as loop off, leave convert to mono off. File type, you can do WAV or AIF. I prefer AIF because WAV and AIF are both what are called lossless file types, okay? They include all of the original data that goes to your master bus, okay? The difference between WAV and AIF is that AIF allows you to include file tags, just like an MP3, while still maintaining lossless full quality. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting the lossless quality of a WAV file while getting the tagging abilities of an MP3, okay? Your sample rate should be 44.1 and your bit depth should be 16 for now. We'll get into dither in a future lesson, but for right now, triangular will work just fine. Create analysis file. Unless you're about to drop this into another Ableton session straight away, you can leave that off, and everything else looks good to go. The only other thing I would confirm is that the render length is exactly as you set it. So it goes from 16.4.4 to 112. Perfect. Okay? Go ahead and click OK. Now, a Finder window will pop up asking where do you want to export this file to. Now, what you should do is navigate to your project file. We've got our sessions under our sessions folder, which we've added to our Finder sidebar, okay? And here's our project. Now, if this is the first time you're exporting a version of this session as an audio file, what you're gonna wanna do is create a folder called Bounces, specifically for exports. And then what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna make sure that your bounce file name is exactly the same name as the session iteration or revision from which you're bouncing it. Trust me, this is very handy in identifying specific bounces and also the sessions they originated from. Now that I've confirmed the file name matches the session from which I'm bouncing it, I'm going to add a space, a dash dash, and then another space. And this is something that I've personally found to be very, very helpful, okay? I'm going to make sure that in the file name, I specify the bit rate and the sample rate at which this is being bounced. Now also feel free to add in the BPM and even the key signature that this composition is in. This might sound a little overkill at first, but if you get in the habit of doing this, as you produce more records, it'll become that much easier to recognize, organize, and categorize your records as time goes on. Don't feel obligated, but it will save you a lot of time in the future, and it certainly bespeaks a professional approach when other people see your bounces. So now that I've got that set up, I'm gonna hit save and go ahead and let Ableton do its magic. Voila. Now, if you go into your Finder, you should see that file, and always, always, always give it a preview. Make sure that first kick or whatever material you have at the beginning of the beat comes through clearly. And I'm just doing a quick scan through the beat right now to make sure it's all there. And checking the ending. Now I just did a quick scan through there to save some time, but if you were sending this out in any capacity that was important to you, to a client or to somebody that you wanted to get their opinion or a final bounce, always listen to the whole thing from beginning to end to make sure that there's no clicking or popping or any dropouts. Make sure that you've got a good render before sending it out to anybody. So now I'm gonna do that process all over again and highlight the major points that are extremely important. So again, and just to make this a new go round of this exercise, I'm going to do a save as on this, and I'm going to make this 0.02. I'm going to go back and rename the original. 0.02. Always do your collect all and save. Okay. So I'm gonna go through the track. Okay, sounds good. So I'm gonna highlight all of my material in my track, hit Command L to draw a loop brace around it. Zoom into the very beginning, add just a little bit there, that 16.4.4 to the beginning, go to the end, turn my looping off so it doesn't loop back to the beginning. Listen for when the effect tail of any of the tracks in this track, but listen for all of the effects tails to die out. Right about there, add an extra bar for good measure. Okay. Make sure on my master bus that without a limiter, limiter's off. Make sure on my master bus without a limiter, my peaks are above -6 but below 0. Then I can engage my limiter to make sure that there are no ghost overs. Now, one thing that we haven't addressed since lesson 2 is your CPU. Please make sure that before you bounce that multi-core, multi-processor support is on. It drastically improves both the speed and even the quality of your exports, okay? So now that I've got my level set correctly, the limiter on, my loop brace length set accordingly, I'm gonna hit Command-Shift-R to pull up my export window. I'm going to confirm that all of my settings here are what I wish them to be. So master is the rendered track, normalize, render as loop, and convert to mono are off. File type is AIF, sample rate is 44.1, bit depth is 16, dither options is triangular dither. I'm doing no analysis file and the rest looks good, and I'm confirming that my selected time range is exactly what I want it to be. I'm hitting OK. I'm going back to my bounces folder and my file name looks good. It's from the session that I'm bouncing from. I'm gonna add a space, -- space. It's a 16-bit 44K1 bounce at 125 BPM in the key of A minor. Okay? Go ahead and hit save. Let Ableton render it to disk. And you're golden. Go back to Finder and confirm that your bounce is there and just give it a quick listen. And there you go. That's how you export audio from Ableton to a 2-track file. So now that you've exported your audio to a 2-track file that can be played out outside of Ableton, here's the bonus round. Notice that this file, because it's a lossless file, it includes all of the original digital information that I programmed into the track in Ableton, but that the file size is 32 megs. Most email clients like Gmail or Yahoo, etc., have a file size attachment limit of 20 megabytes. Now, you're not gonna need to send a full quality A file if this isn't a final bounce. So what if you just wanna send your idea to someone? Or what if you wanna listen on an MP3 player? Here's a tool that I found that's the quickest, easiest, and most efficient for converting lossless files like WAV or A files into MP3s, which you can then send out. So what you're gonna do is pull up an internet browser, and all you're gonna search for is XLD. It should be the first link that comes up from Google. Click on it. Here's the page. Gonna go down, and we're gonna download this DMG file right here. Okay, so once that finishes downloading, open up that DMG, and what you're gonna do is drag XLD the app into your applications. Let that copy over. It's copying over down here. And I'm also gonna drag XLD down into my dock. Okay? You can close out of that, and I'm gonna go back to my Finder over here. I'm gonna open a new Finder window, go to Applications. You can eject the DMG if you like. Okay, so once I found that app in my applications, I'm gonna go ahead and launch it. And for the first time, yes, I do wanna open it. And basically, XLD is a file converter. You can throw any of these file types at it, and it will convert to any of these file types. What we wanna do is convert to a lame MP3, okay? Lame is pretty much the best encoder out there for MP3s. Hit Option, and these are the settings that you want. CBR, constant bitrate, high quality, joint stereo, and 44.1 is your sampling frequency. The next thing, which is very important, is make sure that your CBR is set to 320. So when you hear 320 MP3, this is what they're referring to, okay? As long as you have CBR, high, joint stereo, 44.1, 320, you're good to go. Now, the beautiful thing about XLD is that once you set that option up, you can quit the program and simply drag your exported a file onto the icon for XLD in your dock. It'll launch XLD, convert that A file to an MP3 automatically, and place the converted MP3 in the same folder as the originating A file or WAV file. So now I've got that MP3, look at that, down to 7.3 megabytes, and sounds great to me. You'd be hard pressed to find a difference in quality between these two unless you're on a huge club sound system or a festival sound system, or you're just an audiophile and you have extremely detailed speakers. Most people aren't gonna be able to tell the difference, and you're able to work with a much smaller file size. So that was the bonus round. Now you know how to get your audio out of Ableton and into a 2-track file, and even how to compress that file down so you can get it out to people more easily. That about wraps up Lesson 10 and Unit 1. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Much more to come very soon. So that about wraps up Unit 1. Hope you enjoyed, and that you're as excited as I am for Unit 2. Don't forget, the best way to lock in the concepts we've covered is with practice. We've included a task so that you can easily review all of Unit 1 by getting hands-on. And remember, you can always get a BPC to make sure you're on the right track and getting the most from Ableton Online. Thanks, guys. See you soon.